It is 12:07. It's snowing in Fresno. Are you kidding me? Holy moly. Wow. I didn't know it snowed in Fresno. Thanks, Director, for the fake snow. I'm Austin Reed. You know, Christmas is coming up. It is on a Saturday this year, December 25th. Man, how did this happen? Like, just, it's already almost here.
Yep. Flying at us.
flying at us, just like the snow. Pastor Brad, along with Matt Perkins with People's Church, our guests today. Oh, so much to talk about, so much to be, I think, thankful for, so much to be grateful for this holiday season. I feel like life is not as bad as it was in 2020. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. It's a little bit better of a year, and we're looking ahead to 2022. So far in December, you guys have been very, very busy. Pastor, tell me a little bit about what's happening this month, as we're already at the, at the 8th now.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Right. We have a lot of things going on, and Pastor Matt is with me because he is responsible and leads most of this, so he can explain it better than I. But we have a lot of things going on in addition to the normal activities. So one thing that happens at People's Church very much is that we tend to add things to what is already happening, not delete a whole lot. So our outreaches to the community, our PC Care Center, our food banks, our clothing activity, all of those things continue to happen and are going great. And obviously in the holiday season as a whole, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, there's a lot more family connection and activity, which if you are struggling with some food insecurity and maybe don't have the resources you need, tends to be a time of year where there's a lot more requests. And so lots going on there. As well as just our normal programming with youth and children's and women's and men's and Sundays. But in addition to all of that, which Matt can speak to the details of that, Pastor Matt can speak to the details of that better than I, but on the 19th is our Christmas Sunday, and Matt's got a whole activity taking place there. And then we have a Christmas Eve candlelight gathering on the 24th, actually two of those at 4 and 6. And then we also we end every year with a New Year's Eve communion gathering that really kind of thanks the Lord and commits the year that has happened to memory and pray for the best things to happen in the year to come.
Pastor Matt, welcome. This is your first time on the show. So
it is.
We're so happy that you're here. It's funny, when Brad was walking in with Matt, I was like, you look so familiar. I said, well, I think I've seen you in, because you guys have an amazing production team at People's Church, so all the videos. But of course, I've gone to People's Church, and I saw you because you were singing. You're part of the music. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So coming up on the 19th, we'll have production Christmas presentation. It's called The Missing Piece, and I think even as you've alluded to of 2021 versus 2020, while it's different, I think the feelings are still the same, is that people they're searching, they are looking for something that is filling that void, and they're missing peace in their hearts. And so we have our choir and music team, band. We'll have kids involved with that, some dancers, and all of this is set to talk about where Isaiah 9:6, and it talks about he'll be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, and he's the Prince of Peace. And so I think with so much turmoil happening in hearts and lives, this is a way to kind of bring everything together and say, here's what we have, here's who we are. And we can't do it on our own. We need Jesus Christ. He's Emmanuel, God with us, the Prince of Peace. And so that's what this day is about, and on the 19th. And that will continue really through the month of December, through messages and the theme of that, the missing piece, and how can we have peace in our hearts. And that's what this is about.
There's so many moving pieces to the puzzle as far as music. Mm-hmm. And talk a little bit about that, just how much time it takes to prepare.
Before Matt tells you that, because Matt knows the answer to that, but just to give Matt some credit, when you talk about the production team and all of that stuff, that's all underneath Pastor Matt's leadership. So that entire staff, that entire department, everything from sound to video to lighting to then obviously the music and everything else, all of that staff, hundreds of volunteers, not hundreds of staff, but all of that staff, hundreds of volunteers, all fall underneath Matt. And so Matt's definitely the guy to ask that question to.
Well, I think early, typically our Christmas planning will start, in the middle of summer, and start looking toward, what themes are and what we're looking to accomplish through that. And so whether it's themes, listening to music, obviously we work ahead and looking at what's coming up. We know that December is always there, and so walking into that, being prepared, and with our production team, what things do we need to do from staging, whether that's changed, do we add to from either lighting, video, sound, and how we can be most prepared. Because ultimately, the technology is just a tool to convey a message. And so, if you build it just on technology and icing, but there's no substance, then you've missed the whole point. And so everything that we're doing is trying to just enforce and enhance the message of Jesus Christ coming to bring us peace in our hearts. And so whether that's from a music standpoint, rehearsing with our band and team, it takes a lot of people to allow that to happen. And so it's an honor to serve, but also to be able to convey the message.
Pastor Brad, what is the prime message this year?
Prime messages, I think that, if you go back this roughly 2,000 years when Christ was born, the crying need, the crying feel, per se, of the people of the day, dealing with Roman rule and all the different things that were happening. And when you talk about the persecution and the struggles and the feelings with government and the feelings with being underneath this heavy, Scripture uses the term yoke of burden and bondage and all of these different things. And Jesus showed up in the middle of that. And when Jesus showed up in the middle of that, what was interesting is if you kind of fast forward now, this 2,000 plus years, there's, even as you started this and talking about how, it's not 2020, but it's still 2021, and there's still these questions and this, and there's everything still from the ongoing COVID discussions and the ongoing, Delta variants and Omicron variants and all the different things that are happening. And then you add to that what has obviously been a very politically charged upheaval window of time that seems to almost never get a break from, and all of the different discussions. And yet here is this answer to the people's prayers, which was the Messiah in Jesus Christ. But that answer of Jesus Christ as the Messiah didn't come in the form people expected. It came in a form that was to ultimately deal with us, me individually, you individually, Matt individually. Didn't come to overthrow Rome, didn't come to kind of take us in. And so often in our lives, we have a desire for Christ, for God in our lives, for Jesus in our lives to fix all of these other things. And he obviously has the power to do that, and many times we see that happen. But most of the time what takes place is Jesus focuses on us. Are we the kind of people that we're supposed to be? Do we act like Christ? Are we compassionate when we see others hurting? Are we forgiving when people have hurt us? Are we the kind of people who model the reality of Christ in our lives? And so very much there's a whole lot more similarities to the world we live in today and the world that Christ showed up in 2,000 years ago than maybe we realize. And so very much the theme is be the kind of person Christ would have you be in the middle of today in this Christmas season. And that would be the greatest gift you could give Christ, is act like him.
I love it. I love it. Very well said. Pastor Matt, talk a little bit about just bridging that gap between bringing music and entertainment to your fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? Like, what I'm trying to say is, how do you bring entertainment and Christ together?
Right. Well, I think it's if you have just entertainment but no Christ, there's nothing different than what people could see down the street or at a club or whatever. And so I think it has to be the merging. Now, if it's all Christ and there's no talent to convey that music, people might not come back. So I think it always has to be that that blending or that tension of going, how can we convey? Because I think we have to do what we do with excellence, and I think now it's what can we do with what we have been given, and so it's not well, boy, this is so much better because it's excellent. It's not all about performance, but there is that fact of how do you convey the message of Christ in a way that is pleasing to, or we enjoy it, and it sounds good, and visually it conveys well. So I think you always have to, not only from a entertainment or production standpoint, but also doing that in a way that touches multiple generations, whether it's from kids and children that will have a part of that program to those who are more senior in age, and it has to be something that you can communicate that you're presenting that message to the most, the best you can, to the widest range of age. And so it's not excluding or leaving people out, but doing that to the best of your ability.
People respond differently to different things. There are people who very much respond to the spoken word, the preaching, things like that. There's other people who the artistic component, whether that's music or drama or video, whatever those artistic components would be, and there's more than that. And I think what Matt does extremely well and works to do, Pastor Matt does extremely well and works to do in his department, is make sure of a couple things. Number one, we have as much opportunity in a short window to capture whatever maybe you respond to music or the arts or drama or the spoken word. So to have all of those in the middle of this. Secondarily, we very, very much believe that everything we do is unto the Lord. That's a kind of a scriptural way to say it, which means then that if everything we do is unto God, if everything we do as an offering to God, then we have to do that at the greatest possible level we can. So the greatest standard of excellence that we're capable of doing. Obviously, there are limitations in a lot of ways, but inside of those limitations, what's the best we can possibly do? In addition to that, we really do, as Matt said, we work to be multi-generational. And that's really, really hard, to be honest, because frankly, if we were just to focus on a segment of society or a age bracket, you can really nail that. If it's a younger generation today, have it be louder, have it be, more smoke, have it be more jeans, have it be more this. If it's an older generation that actually I'm probably closer to, so they, get the old hymnals. Exactly. Get the old hymnals, sing the song out of the hymnal with the keyboard and keep the drums off the stage and sing it like that. And people will love that in that age bracket. So one of the things that we try to do very, very hard is go, if there's not some component of this, now we don't mean biblically incorrect, but if there isn't some component of this that you kind of find yourself going, that's not really for me, then we probably failed. And if there's not some component that you say, hey, that right there, I loved that, then we have failed again. So we want to make sure we're covering the whole thing in a way, and then we really work to educate our faith family, which is what we call our congregation, that there's no grandma and grandpa that doesn't want their grandkid to come to church with them, which means how we sing that song might need to be different. At the same sense, children, which is actually harder to do because grandparents get this easier, children and grandkids understand there's nothing wrong with singing a song once in a while that your grandma and grandpa like the way they like to sing it. And that's called maturing and realizing not everything is for you. And so in addition to whatever the theme or the message of the day, there's the complexity is in all these things we're discussing.
And the beautiful thing about People's Church is you've got the it's the G.L. Johnson Chapel, right?
Right.
So that's for maybe an older audience that,
Correct.
like you said, just wants to hear the word, and but then you've got is that the other? What do you call that? The
auditorium.
The auditorium.
Yeah.
Okay, where it's maybe skewed a little bit younger.
100%.
So I think that's a real, and I don't know of any other church really in the Central Valley that does that. So, people that are watching today, maybe they don't have a solid church community. Why come out on December 19th, Christmas Eve, to give you guys a chance? I'm going to go with you, Matt, first.
Sure.
Pastor Matt.
Well, on Christmas Eve, one we have the 19th where that presentation, the music presentation, all of that will happen on that 19th, and that's in our morning gatherings at 9 and 11. But then on Christmas Eve, that is more of what would be a traditional candlelight gathering at both 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., where there's, classic, Christmas hymns, Christmas carols that you would typically expect on that. That is I think one of the favorites of a gathering, because there isn't all of the production about things, but just time to connect with family, kind of center on, hey, this is what this time of year is all about. And it's all through the month. It is focusing on Jesus, but there are different ways that we communicate that. Mm-hmm. On the 24th is just one of those times where you have everyone together in the auditorium, from the great grandma and grandpa to the babies that are there. And with that candlelight, when it comes to the end, it's powerful and it's moving to experience that as a faith family.
I would say, number one, if you are actively engaged and plugged into a local church in this community, I would be the first to say, stay at that church, go to that church, find out what's going on. If you are not actively engaged or attending a church in the community, I would say you should try People's for a variety of reasons. Right off the top of my head is it really is a wonderfully eclectic group of people. There is all age brackets. You see everything from suit and ties and dresses, not very many, to jeans and shorts and T-shirts. And we really do have a come-as-you-are kind of feeling to our faith family. Secondly, we are Christ-centered, Christ-focused very much, and so you're not going to wonder about that. And the third thing I think is really, really important. We have a very strong philosophical approach that we're all someplace in this journey, in this faith, in this God journey. Well, maybe that's way over here, and that's, I don't even know where God exists, or if he exists, or where he plays in my life, to very, very committed to Christ. What we really, really work on as a faith family and as a church is to say, hey, we're all on this journey. Wherever you're at in the journey, that's okay. Let's just work on taking the next step together. So the next step for me is very different than the next step for somebody else. But there's always a step. There's always a seeking. There's always a desire. And so let's just work on taking the next step together. And so everything from the arts to the verbal message to everything is very much through that lens. And so it really is wonderful because it's very much a microcosm of this community, and we love doing life together.
I drove by last night, and it looks beautiful with the lights now.
Oh, the
it looks,
lights
it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Anything new with I Love My City, the I Love My City campaign?
Yeah, that's going really, really well. We have a couple more weeks, then they take a week or so off over the holidays.
Okay.
And so a lot of, I think they did 100 or something Thanksgiving full meals for families, so that's not a bag of groceries, that's the whole thing. Doing something very, very similar for Christmas. There's also a portion of I Love My City. It's called Angel Tree. And so we're providing Christmas gifts to hundreds of children in the community that are all from either needy families. There's a program called Teen Challenge, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we
Very
provide,
good program.
yeah, wonderful program. And so obviously most of them in this program are men. There is some females as well, but obviously are not able to give Christmas gifts to their children. So we actually provide Christmas gifts on behalf of the father. So it's not from People's Church, it's from Dad, here's gifts.
Okay.
And so we are working to do that through the season. So there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gifts there. And then as we go into the first of the year, they're very much ramping up, not only on site every Tuesday, the PC Care Center, that's food and clothing, that's all free, but ramping up aggressively, taking the trailer and the truck out into different parts of the community, typically working almost always with other churches in the community in that individual area.
Okay.
And that not only provides food and clothing, but many times that also has a medical component. So local doctors in our congregation, our faith family, dentists are able to do some things to go into different parts of the community that maybe are underserved in those areas, not with just clothes and food, but medical needs and things like that. So that's really continuing to grow. In addition to that, our student ministries department, our youth department, is very actively, there's a growing component of campus outreach, and so now our youth pastors on multiple campuses, just on Central High School's campus yesterday, providing a lot of food and things for the different football, basketball teams, things of that nature. So we're very, very aggressively engaged in the community, not just in the North Fresno side of the community, but the whole community.
Matt, anybody that's watching today and they're thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe I want to get involved musically with People's Church.
Sure.
Could they connect with you? Or
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they can call either our church office, and they can connect with our worship arts department, or they can email us at worship@peopleschurch.org and connect with us, and we'd love to have a conversation and see how we can implement their gifts and go from there.
To be fair, I actually did that once.
Did you?
And they said no, and I became the executive pastor because I can't say.
I think the email bounced.
That's interesting. The RIT department doesn't want any of my emails get to worship arts.
That's how it happens. That's how it happens. Okay, so we've got the 19th, 9 and 11 a.m., right?
And you're going to be there, Austin.
I'm going to be there, and yes, I will. I will definitely.
No, I was looking like deep into your soul.
I will be there. I will be there. I will. Christmas Eve. And then which will be the candle lighting.
Yeah,
right?
that's 4 and 6.
4 and
Every
6.
person gets their own candles, so at the end it really is beautiful.
Oh, awesome. And then New Year's Eve, 6 to 7.
Yep.
Right?
There's communion
then,
as part of that.
January 2nd.
Yep.
That's when.
That's we start the whole new year. I speak that Sunday, January 2nd at 9.
Perfect.
So every Sunday we're at 9 and 11, full children's programming, but on January 2nd I speak, yes.
Not to play favorites or anything, but Brad, I love going when you are giving the sermon because you're just so positive. I'll have to listen to yours sometimes, right?
You need to get Matt back. Matt has a whole ministry. I don't want to take his thing up, but he has a whole ministry dealing with grief. Both Matt's wife died a few years ago of cancer, and his present wife, her husband, passed away of a heart attack spontaneously. They got together, and they have a whole grief ministry they do. So sometime you got to get and talk with him about that.
Yeah, we should do more on that for sure.
Yep.
So, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Good to see you,
Christmas.
buddy.
Thanks
Pastor
so much.
Brad, Pastor Matt, thank you guys. Check it out, People's Church, everybody. peopleschurch.org. I'm Austin Reed. Merry Christmas to you.